Mexico. Not just a land of pristine sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, or some of the most spectacular marine life on the planet, but also home to what many consider to be some of the very best cruising grounds anywhere. But before taking your boat there, you should consider taking your fingers here so you can look after your documentation. Here is where you apply for your vessel's temporary import permit, or TIP for short. We'll come back here in a moment. Before we do that, just a couple of important pieces of information. First, if the primary vessel is less than 4.5 meters in length, you can stop here as you don't need a tip. Second, as you will see in a bit, you can only complete this tip application online if you hold a North American passport. That means a passport for Canada, the US, or Mexico. If you are from outside one of those countries, you will either need an agent to help you out, or you can just get your tip after entering Mexican waters at an official port of entry. Same situation if what you have is a bill of sale and not a registration. And third, if you are looking at this so you can submit your application now but enter Mexico with your boat in 3 months, then well done. You've given yourself plenty of time to get all the documents and serial numbers you need before making the application, because you can only submit between 11 and 60 days prior to making entry. So let's get to it. First, what documentation do you need? Obviously, the owner's passport, and for the most part, we're making the assumption the owner is the person completing the application. Next, you will need your official vessel registration. That may be from Transport Canada, the U.S. Coast Guard, or some other official body. Now, what about the registration for any tender, dinghy, jet ski, or other motorized vehicle that is normally with the primary vessel? Get all that documentation ready and make note of all serial numbers, brand, model year, etc. And remember that if you have a tender of some nature that is over 4.5 meters, that's 14.7 feet, it will require its very own tip. We recommend you create a folder on your computer where you can place a PDF for each of those documents and have everything sitting there ready to go and easy to find. If you're not the owner but are completing the application on behalf of the owner, you'll also need a notarized letter of authorization from the owner giving you permission to do so, and your government-issued ID, ideally, again, your Mexican, U.S., or Canadian passport. Now, this may sound weird, but save a blank PDF document in the folder as well. We'll show you why shortly. And one final but important note on these PDFs. Each individual document must be less than 1 megabyte. So if you're doing scans of documents, you may want to play with the settings or have them done at some place like Staples. Don't forget to get the serial numbers for the motors on the primary vessel and all the accompanying vessels and toys to be included on the tip. If the boat is on a trailer, you'll need the serial number and make of the trailer as well. 2 more quick notes. The applicant for the tip must be at least 18 years of age, and the credit card used to pay for the tip must be in the same name as the person making the application. That's very important. So, with all the prep work complete, let's look to see how easy it is to complete the tip application. We recommend you start here at the website for Marina de La Paz in Baja California Sur, as their site at marinalapaz.com has many superb resources, including a direct access point to Banjercito, which is where you'll actually complete the application. In the info section, look for Links of Interest and then select the button for Get Tip. When you land at the home of Banjercito, not surprisingly, the page will be in Spanish. To switch that over to English, you'll find the language toggle in the top right corner. Now we can begin a new application. Next, select Accept the Privacy Notice. You can, of course, read it before, but who actually reads these things? On this next page is where you'll select the type of permit you're completing, and in our case, it's a boat. We covered this before, but as you'll see in the top line here, you can only submit the application between 11 and 60 days prior to bringing the boat to Mexico. There's also a line that indicates the tip will be sent to your address, but that just hasn't been updated. You'll now get your tip by email. Hit Continue. Yes, agree to the terms and conditions. Again, read them if you so choose. And here we are on application page 1. For the first drop-down, the question is asking the type of owner. It says who is the owner, but what they're looking for is to identify if the owner is an individual or a legal entity such as an ownership LLC. We'll continue as an individual or natural person. Next, we select the importer type, and you can see by that they are asking, are you Mexican or a foreigner? Assuming you're from the US or Canada, you'd select foreign. Following that, enter the document type you'll be using. In most cases, I suspect you'll be selecting a passport. And here is why we mentioned earlier you must be from North America to apply online. It's because those are the only sections available. We'll select Canada for now and then enter the passport number on the next line. You'll see some helpful tips in the top right of the page to assist as you go. Now we enter the owner's first and last name. Make sure the name on your official documentation is what is entered here. No nicknames or short forms like Mike instead of Michael. The name in the application must match the documentation. In many countries, including Mexico, your mother's maiden name is also included as a part of your last name. If that's the case for you, enter it here. What about the planned date of entry into Mexico? Here you'll see a limitation on available dates you can select, and that takes us back to what we mentioned before, which is that you can only apply between 11 and 60 days before you're planning to enter Mexico with your boat. So select the date and hit Next. On to page 2. At the top, you can review what you entered on page 1 and go back if anything was entered wrong. But for us, we're moving on. The first question you see is, who is filing this permit? Is it the owner? Yes or no? If you say no, then follow the steps and enter all the required information, basically name and address. If you say yes, then we continue to more info for the owner. Starting off, it's your date of birth, so month, day, and year. Next, enter your telephone number, including the area and country codes, which for the US and Canada is 01. For Mexico, it is 52. You can feel it, right? You're getting closer to Mexico all the time. So close, in fact, the next selection is to identify your point of entry. If you're on the West Coast and coming in by water, it may very well be Ensenada, just about 60 miles south of the border. If it's a trailer boat, your port may be San Ysidro or Tecate. There are options for virtually all of the land crossings and selections for all the official ports of entry on both coasts. Remember earlier we mentioned Mexico used to send your temporary import permit right to your home? Well, they don't now. It comes by email. That was the reason why you could not apply less than 11 days before making entry. It's possible both the date range and this mailing address option will disappear from the application at some point. So now, we have who you are and where you're from looked after. Let's move on to the vessel itself. You know, your own private yacht, whether 20 feet or 200. First, does it have a name? Not just what you call it as you're gently waxing the hull, but what is your hailing name? The name emblazoned on the hull. Next, and this may be the single most important piece of information on this document, the hull identification number, or HIN. If your boat was manufactured after about 1969, chances are you have a hull ID number, and it can usually be found on the top right side of the transom. If there is no HIN, let's just call your boat a Classic and select No here. If your boat's registered with the government, such as Transport Canada or the US Coast Guard, select Yes here and then enter the number. Next, select the brand of boat you're importing. There's a fairly comprehensive list available, but they don't have them all. So after not finding yours on the list, go down to the very bottom and select Other. Then fill in the brand name on the new entry box that will pop up. Before we complete that for Mr. Barrington, we'll first pop over to Model. By model, what they're actually looking for is the model year or year of manufacture. Now, on we go to the type of vessel. In most cases, you'll be selecting a sailboat or a motor yacht, or maybe even an inboard or outboard power boat. Probably not too many selections for rowboat made these days. Next is the option for class, and for here, what they want to know is, will this be used for recreational purposes only, or are you planning to make money with it doing charters? If your boat has a motor to make it go, enter the serial number or serial numbers here, one for each engine on the primary vessel. And just like the hull ID number, take some time to get this right. Those two numbers are the most likely numbers to be checked at some point in your Mexican journey. Next, we have selections for the trailer. The way the question reads, it appears there are some boats that tow trailers, but in actual fact, here is where you enter the serial number and manufacturer for the trailer used for hauling the boat. Finally, on this page, we add the toys. Now, by a recreational vehicle, they're not asking about a motorhome, but rather your tender, your dinghy, your jet ski, etc. If you have multiple toys, be sure you enter them all here by clicking on Add Vehicle. And remember, any vessel over 4.5 meters or 14.7 feet has to have its own tip. So if your tender is a 20-foot ski boat, congratulations! You get to do this complete application twice. The list of manufacturer selections available here is quite a bit shorter than we saw previously, so expect to select Other and then enter the brand. Once you have all your toys entered, then now is the time to hit Next. You'll have a little window pop up now, and at this point, you'll feel you're done, but not quite yet. I think that's why they included this little piece of satisfying information which tells you the tip will be issued for a period of 10 years. Not bad for a single application. A multi-year, multi-entry permit that's even renewable, all completed in less time than it takes to enjoy a margarita. Now remember that folder you created previously with all those PDF documents? It's time to attach those. Pretty easy. Just go through the selections one by one. And if you're the owner and you're completing the application yourself, this is where those blank PDFs you saved will come in handy. The passport and registration fields are easy enough, and you can go and attach those documents one by one. The passport, the main vessel registration, and the dinghy registration or registrations. But then when you go to move on, you'll see Next is not available. That means these last two selections will need an attachment, so you can use those blank PDFs to attach to the application. That's perfectly fine. Moving on, there's now one last chance to review the information entered to confirm everything is correct. Take the few seconds required to go through all the information, and if you need to, you can always go back to make corrections. If the information is good, then it's time to select the option to confirm the data, and then we move over to the final page in the app. Yes, it's time to pay. First, let's look at the price. This is in Mexican pesos, not dollars, so it's very reasonable, particularly for a 10-year tip. At the time this video was created, the exchange rate for the greenback was about 21 pesos per dollar, and in the neighborhood of 16 to 1 for the Canadian loonie. Finally, complete all the credit card information for your Visa or MasterCard, remembering the card must have been issued in the same name as the person submitting the tip. Once the credit card info is created, hit Pay. It's the final step. For the purposes of this demo video, we don't want to submit a fake application. So instead, we'll just close this out. There you go. You've now applied for your Mexican temporary import permit, and likely inside the next 2 to 3 business days, you will have your shiny new tip returned via email. Okay, here's just a few last notes. As we mentioned, this is a multi-entry permit, and it is renewable. But if you're planning to leave and not return, or if you're selling your boat, make sure you cancel your tip. It's important you cancel your tip, even if it is soon to be or has been expired. If you don't cancel it, there could be some expensive challenges down the way for yourself or a new owner who just might want to go to Mexico. We hope this brief tutorial has provided some valuable information to get you a little closer to cruising the warm Mexican waters. If you do your legwork up front and have all the documents and numbers ready to go, then the entire application process should take you less than 10 minutes. And with that, just one final note. Enjoy Mexico.